left Penang at the age of 17 and came back in my mid-40s, about 30 years later. And I think that because I've always lived in the heart of Georgetown, in the core parts of the UNESCO heritage site, the Penang that I left 30 years before and the Penang that I came back to was essentially unchanged, physically. I think what changed for me was the fact that the intangible heritage of the area, the district that I grew up in, had disappeared. So in one generation, modernization and development had meant that all the practices, not all, but a lot of it had all disappeared. The physical buildings were all still here. They were decaying, but they could be restored. So what could not be restored was people's belief and faith in the cultural and spiritual and religious practices that was going on in the precinct. I basically grew up around here, Mantri Street. My family home was around here, in the street. I went to school down the road, so the same street. So I came back to the street where, I grew up in. So 360 degrees, and 30 years later, I ended up in Point Zero. I grew up, got myself a career, got an education overseas. Well, in my mind, I basically made enough money to do what I wanted to do. I was a professional banker. I was a fund manager, investment manager, based in Australia. And that allowed me to have the financial freedom to do what I wanted to do in my middle age. So that was basically what I did in the 30 years. I sort of traveled the world. I got myself very much involved in doing all the things that I love doing, which is like visiting palaces, castles, European museums, learning about art, life and history. And not knowing that it would help me put all that into context when I was doing up these Peranakan houses. Having the knowledge base about what period things were, what the design references were about, was all preparing me for this moment. Coming back to Penang was the last thing on my mind. When we leave for greener pastures, or what I thought was greener pastures, you never thought that you end up in point one, in the same spot where you left. I think I would have lost a lot of money if someone had taken a bet with me that I would end up here, the same spot. Even my parents were very surprised. You just can't plan these things, right? You can't plan that your banking career was going to end when you're in your early 40s. It ended because I made sure that I didn't get another job when my bank was taken over. It ended because I wanted to see what else there was to do, I could do in Asia. I came back because I wanted to get to know my mother again. She was in her 80s and had become widowed, and I thought that it was a great chance for me to look after her because I had been away for so long. And while I was doing that, I began to see the beauty of the old Georgetown again. And that was even before UNESCO had inscribed Georgetown as a World Heritage Site. Where I'm sitting now in this house was the first house I bought, and that was about in the year 2006. And that was like 2 years before the inscription of by UNESCO. And even the inscription by UNESCO was a total surprise for all of us, because I know that we had made, Georgetown, Penang had made an attempt for inscription in the year 2000, and that was rejected. So I didn't think that they would resubmit again together with Malacca. I thought it was the right time because people were starting to be aware of the inner city, the beauty and the heritage that they had here. And for the first time, one could buy into the heritage area here, because they were under the rent control for a long time, for 40, 50 years. And when that was repealed in the year 2000, finally these properties came up for sale for the first time. It was about 2008, inscription of the World Heritage Site happened so suddenly. I was quite shocked, but I was very happy, because that meant that most of the physical and material assets, architectural assets in Georgetown would be preserved, and there's so much of it that should be preserved. And then, of course, being in the right place at the right time meant that properties popped up for sale right before my eyes. I had a lot of choice. There was one night I had a shopping list, because there was this trust that was vested after 50 years. And so the owner wanted to sell everything in this, on that list that he inherited. I think there was about 40 properties there, all in the heritage zone. And so we just went to look around and bought a few properties from that list. And the first one, of course, was Mantri Mews, which was my great-grandfather's garage. It was right next door to his house. So that had a lot of connections with me. Relatives dropped this box of photos off to me. He said that, oh, I think I should be the one to keep them. So I hadn't bothered looking at them until recently. And the black and whites, I looked at them and I thought, I've actually seen these photos before. They were hanging in my great-grandfather's house. When I was a child, I used to go there, and then on the wall was this framed up photograph of all these tiny little photographs. And I always wondered what they were, but I was too scared to ask. And then I saw a coffin on one of them, and I thought, oh my God, how macabre. Why would they want to have photographs of all that in this dining room? But they did. Anyway, now I'm the keeper and the trustee of these photographs. So it's fascinating, because I love just looking at the streetscape, the clothes people were wearing, the cultural traditions of funerals in 1957. That's more than 60 years ago. It's almost 65 years ago. And it's like a different world completely. So it had a lot of emotional connection to me, that Mantri Mews, because I was cycling past that property every morning to school. We went to buy ice there. The first little cubicle was selling ice. There were actually people living right down that whole bank of cubicles that were meant to be for horse carriages. So I think that was very fortuitous, coming across that. And, one thing led to another. I was looking at this row of terraces after buying Mantri Mews. I was looking at this row of terraces up the road from Mantri Mews. There was a for sale sign out there. It was completely dilapidated, opened up to the elements, and I thought, wow, what a great opportunity. Anyway, this row of properties that's called 7 Terraces. It took me 2 years to negotiate because it started off being too expensive for what it was. And then the market slowly moved up to what they wanted for it. And to be fair, they never budged from their price. They always stuck onto that price. And when it got to that price, the market, I then agreed to buy it at that price. Looking back, it's ridiculous. It was such little money, it was ridiculous. But at that time, I just didn't want to pay over the odds because there was nothing left there. There was very little left in the property. So I just valued it as for land value. And for the heritage zone in Georgetown, there was really no encouragement and no incentive. And a lot of roadblocks, a lot of do not come here, like signs, when you wanted to buy into the heritage zone. And also in those early days, people did not know what the rules were, what the requirements were. I don't know whether I would do it, frankly, if I knew how difficult it was. And it still is. The style of the hotel, basically, I looked at what was unique about Georgetown. Why did people come here? What was unique in terms of the architectural inventory here? Georgetown was very much a 19th century mercantile port. And you have a lot of merchants' houses, middle class housing. And subsequently, when wealth was created, more wealth was created, these houses were decorated to an inch of its life. I think the peak period was the 1920s. So when I looked at these shells, I thought, it's obvious that we have to create what was sensitive to the period, what was sensitive to what was here before. And because I grew up in these homes, it was just very natural for me to know how to fit them out, how the layout, how the house was used. I felt that it was my duty to show people the beauty and the grace and the glamour of these houses when they were done up. I think, that was my purpose and my dream, was to create the Peranakan era or recreate the Peranakan era for travelers to step back in time. In the reception area, you'll find benches, opium beds, center tables, and the east-west tables, I'd call them, or the console tables. So these are examples of what you'll find in your rooms as well. Not all of it, but some of it. Welcome to the gallery, where we have several exhibitions each year. And it's from my collection and our things that I've accumulated over time. And Right at the moment, we have an exhibition of the 19th century Nonia gilded furniture. One of the unique things in Seven Terraces is its collection of Blackwood and mother-of-pearl inlaid furniture. We have a huge collection in the public areas and also in the rooms. It's a great archive for people who want to look at these things, and I find it incredibly comfortable. I know some people think it's not, but I do. It's very good for your back as well. So wander around and have a look and take in the feel of what the gilded period for Peranakan culture was all about. It was in the 1920s. One of my favorite things in Seven Terraces, which I'd like to share with you, is my Kamcheng collection. This is one of the things that you mustn't miss when you come into Seven Terraces. I built up and it's on loan to Seven Terraces, and there's probably about 100 Kamchengs in total in one place, and I'm very proud of it. Perhaps my most prized collection of Peranakan porcelain. One of the unique things, of course, is our collection of wedding furniture from the Peranakan period. And we have several magnificent wedding beds and what's called confinement beds within the hotel itself, and some of them are in your rooms. So these are museum quality, and they are unique in their own right. This is our furniture gallery. Everything in here is for sale. Look at the whole cabinets of Kamchengs, blue and white Kamchengs, cabinets of blue and white kitchen ching, salvaged china from the South China Sea. This would be the envy of any auction house. Look at the stock that we have that's for sale. This is a daybed that I've created from my collection of bits and pieces. I would say it's an upcycled daybed from my collection of wood carvings from the 19th century. Every single piece of carving that you see here is old, but it's framed with new wood, so it lasts at least another 100 years. This is our award-winning restaurant, Kebaya Dining Room, and we have the most fabulous over-the-top drapes that we created for the room. And I know they look a little bit too new, but in a few years' time, they'll look fabulously shabby. One of the things you won't find in the dining room here or in anywhere in the hotel are buffets. I hate buffets. They remind me of recycled food. And everything we do at Seven Terraces is cooked to order. Even your breakfast is cooked to order. So we only use the freshest produce made in-house by our chefs. Luxuries at Seven Terraces are not an option or not an extra. Luxury is a way of life here. It's at no extra cost. And that's what I believe great hotels should be. Your experience of luxury should be part of your stay here. It's not an optional item. You cannot talk about Seven Terraces and our business without talking about our events capability. And when I talk about events capability, I'm talking about my passion and my experience of living in the East and the West, our capability in terms of our styling. When you do an event here, you can entrust the style of the whole event to us, and we will create the magic once you enter the doors at Seven Terraces. Between Colin and myself, F&B manager, we have over a century of experience living in both East and West to be able to create that sparkle in your event. When you do an event here, you can take over the whole hotel. It's only 18 rooms in total, so before COVID, we had people fly in, all their friends from Singapore or Hong Kong, to just have a party here. I mean, it's so affordable, it's ridiculous. Basically, if you wanted to do the sums, it's when you look at what it costs to put on an event, say in the Crazy Rich Asian scene, this would be like 5 or 10% of the cost of doing that. So it's very affordable, it's very stylish, and it's real, the heritage here.